There's an old saying, guys, if you want something done right, you gotta do it yourself. Now, what's that saying? We've transformed into wanting something that you can't have, even though it's right in front of your face and has been done right. Well then, I guess you just have to make your own version, from the ground up. This is the reality we live in, guys, and you could say it's just the bad ending, but hope is not lost. Welcome to the demakes of Bloodborne, a game achievement in game design that fans have taken to making a version for themselves. But why? Why would they need to? And why has Bloodborne on PC joined the urban legends of games such as Half-Life 3, Hollow Knight, Soak Song, and Silent Hills? You need only unravel its history. 7 years. 7 years of community hope. 7 years to age like a fine wine. 7 years to come to a frustrating conclusion. And that conclusion, guys, is that Bloodborne is the best FromSoftware game ever made. And it's the one game most of you guys can't play today, or at least not in the way that you want to. Now, I've already frustrated a lot of you guys probably who clicked on this video, but before you guys pull out your pitchforks and shit, hear me out for 1 second, okay? You see, this video isn't just about why Bloodborne is the best Souls game. This video is a love letter to the fan base of a game that nobody expected to be this beloved. A game that, even after over 7 years, leaves me with an unparalleled sense of awe, an atmosphere drenched in horror, and a combat style so addictive that it stands above all others after almost a decade after its release. So why is Bloodborne better than Elden Ring? And why is it still only on PlayStation? Let's step back into the never-ending, Lovecraftian world of Yharnam once more. Welcome to why I believe that Bloodborne is still the best Souls game ever made. Bloodborne is one of gaming's most atmospheric and haunting experiences. For a place that is so lifelike, the story is primarily focused on death. Unlike other FromSoftware games before it, Bloodborne pits the player in the present rather than the dark future. Normally, you guys hear about the greatness of the legendary characters of the world, eventually meeting them in a hollowed shell of their former glory. But in Bloodborne, well, the player is thrown right into the middle of a new nightmare on a haunted eve in Bloodborne. Again, Bloodborne immediately starts with the player inside of an infirmary, and upon successfully slaying the beast with your fists, you then move on to Central Yharnam where the Great Leapy Scourge is going down. You see bodies burning, men being converted into beasts with bandage on, and the frenzy of a hunt gone terribly wrong all around you. From the get-go, you're trapped in a smothering maze with no room to breathe. The atmosphere is palpable, with people who have locked themselves inside to get away from the beast next door. And just as this Victorian Gothic horror city of Yharnam has completely gone to shit, you find yourself trapped inside without any weapon to fight the prowling horrors. The player awakens once more, now equipped with the weapon to slay beasts and a trick to slay something greater as we venture into the world of Yharnam anew. The story begins to peel back its many layers without ever revealing its full hand. Before I continue, I do want to ask you guys, what's your favorite Souls game, and what's the reason for it? I may have my opinions, guys, but I'm curious to know what you guys think too. Now, in Elden Ring, the player finds themselves awoken in a sprawling world with many sights all around, and the freedom of choice to explore in any direction at their own leisure. The only hint of a purpose to your adventure is the brief exposition presented in the opening cinematic stories of characters that you'll face, lands you'll explore, and well, not really much else. The game presents us with complete freedom in its Souls sandbox, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Elden Ring is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get, right? And this box is so deep, it feels like your hand will never reach the bottom. While Bloodborne may not have nearly as much depth or possibilities for player agency, it does offer something that Elden Ring never fully does: purpose. In Bloodborne, the world doesn't move without the player. In Elden Ring, the world would persist whether or not you were in the story. You see, Bloodborne at its core is a mystery, and there are hints to solve this mystery strategically placed in every environment. You may find yourself coming across an item on the ground, and upon picking it up, you're grabbed by a presence that you don't have enough insight to understand yet. Even the boss designs throughout the game suggest clues to the reality of just what curses the city as you fight through tragic characters and horrors. You may use an attack combo and then accidentally find yourself hitting the L1 button, breaking the one-dimensional weapon into something completely new. Bloodborne constantly rewards the player for learning and mastering its world. 42 weapons, 26 of those being main hand and the other 16 being offhand. Combat always feels fresh and exciting, with an emphasis on speed and fluidity. Up until Bloodborne, combat basically was very slow paced, right? It always felt very calculated and heavy, leading towards finding a window to strike in between enemies' punishing strikes. Did I mention that each of these main 26 hand weapons has an alternate form? By pressing L1, it completely reinvents the way you use it. No longer is this hand axe small. No longer is this a bow. It evolved from Software's formula of getting hit and healing to now getting hit, hitting back, and then hitting back even harder while rallying your health from near death to full health without even consuming a healing item. So I want to ask you why in From Software's latest entry, Eldenring, do we return to the age-old formula without any real invention? Sure, there's a horse now, and yeah, there's a jump button, but even Sekiro presented us with a new way for players to engage in combat with the stance system. After over 7 years, you can still pick up Bloodborne and have a brand new experience in the challenge dungeons, and basically anytime you play it. With new bosses even being discovered as far as over 4 years after the game was initially released, Bloodborne chalice dungeons are very much like Elden Ring's dungeons. You enter a labyrinth and you need to find a lever to then fight a boss and then reap the rewards. In Elden Ring, once the boss is defeated and the rewards collected, you never have to touch the dungeon again. In fact, on follow-up playthroughs in the New Game Plus, many players would rather opt to avoid most dungeons and opting for a more linear path to the best portions of the game and bosses, right? But with Bloodborne, dungeons are constantly rewarding players time and time again with an endless blood-filled loop of conquering one labyrinth after another to dig deeper into the next boss. Yes, Elden Ring is an open-world game, but with that, it comes with many unique challenges for replayability. Conquering the world is such an enormous feat that with subsequent playthroughs, it can feel cheap and kind of repetitive and tedious, right? Bloodborne's game design presents us with a more straightforward experience that's way better paced. However, revisiting the game never gets old, even after over 7 years. After completing Elden Ring, my immediate thought was to fire up the wind tunnel of my PS4 and jump right back into Yharnam. But that's not how I want to experience the game again. Bloodborne has been collecting dust on PlayStations for a shit ton of time now, right? Years and years. If you were lucky enough to grab the price gouge PS5s, you get a game that feels in dire need of a performance update. You can't have the same experience of killing a boss when the death animation is a fucking slideshow, just as you can't have poor souls likes on PC tweeting their disappointment for every few years. Now, From Software isn't really new to remastering or remaking games, right? It did Demon Souls well, and the Dark Souls 1 remaster poorly. Demon Souls was remade via Bluepoint Games, who have a well-received history of remasters and remakes, and I mean the proof is in the pudding, guys. Dark Souls 1, however, was remastered, and it was made by Virtuous and Q-Lock with an oversight by From Software, and was met with criticism for falling short of a fan-made mod to fix the game called DS Fix. The damage that this remaster caused the PC modding community was massive, having them completely scrap projects they were working on because they were built on the old version of the game. And this remaster was basically just a $60 frame rate and performance patch for consoles more than anything else. So that leaves us with those two options. Either Bluepoint Games remakes Bloodborne in their unique art style that they gave Demon Souls, or From Software just patches Bloodborne to 60 FPS and pushes it to all platforms. The funny thing is, though, that honestly, no matter what they decide to do, if they do anything at all, I honestly feel like both of these options would be welcomed, right? Since it's something that the fans just want to have, so they don't have to make their own games or play a shitty 30 FPS port of the game, right? The only thing that's been stopping Bloodborne from coming to PCs is the very company that funded the property, Sony. Sony have been making strides in the past few years to get with the times, first by enabling cross-play support, then by putting their own first-party games on PC, and most recently forming the PlayStation PC label. This was met with Bloodborne trending on Twitter and fresh calls for a remastered version. Fans have continued to pour out cries for years, and Sony could be the heroes by finally bringing it to PC. It's honestly just all wishful thinking though, but it makes sense logically, right? Elden Ring just smashed over 12 million copies in just a month, and it deserved it. It's a great game. Elden Ring has brought FromSoftware to a global stage that they have never touched before, reaching players that were initially put off by previous titles, but imagine the response if their next release was exactly what the fandom had been asking for, well, close to a decade now. Yes, Elden Ring is a great game, but it only made me want to play more Bloodborne. But even in these darkest of nights, I can still see the moonlight.